Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my birthday. Every year, I celebrate by finding either a new movie or an existing favorite to watch. So, for my special day, and mostly because I can, I decided to take a look back on one of my favorite films, Kung Fu Panda. A film I feel has a lot to say about the process of learning new things and believing in your own ability to succeed at them. So today, join me as I dissect the first Kung Fu Panda movie, what I feel it does well, and a lot of the subtle ways the film itself is actually kind of brilliant. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. For those who haven't seen it, or have seen it but need a refresher, the plot's as follows. The story follows Po, a young panda and kung fu enthusiast living a generally unfulfilling life in the Valley of Peace, helping his father Mr. Ping run his noodle shop. When Grandmaster Oogway of the Jade Palace Dojo foresees the return of Tai Lung, a former student from the palace seeking revenge, he and his fellow instructor Master Shifu host a tournament to announce the selection of the legendary Dragon Warrior to become worthy of the equally legendary Dragon Scroll, with everyone, including Po, dropping everything to attend this once-in-a-lifetime event, only for it to be revealed that the Dragon Warrior isn't one of the palace's existing students, but Po himself, much to everyone's confusion. As Po is an avid follower of Kung Fu but struggles to learn it himself, he winds up presenting a unique challenge to Shifu, who is frustrated by his inability to teach Po, but ultimately has to in order to protect the Valley of Peace from Tai Lung's wrath. So what makes Kung Fu Panda work? Well, as you might expect from the premise, the film is generally pretty funny when it needs to be. There's some pretty great comedic delivery with a lot of the jokes, and the film also has some pretty solid physical comedy as well. The film is also considered a positive portrayal of Chinese culture and was incredibly popular in China when it first released, with Chinese director Lu Chuan highly praising the film for how much it actually got right. However, what I mainly want to focus on is the action, because Kung Fu Panda actually handles the Kung Fu side of the title with a lot more care than you'd expect from a film like this. Co-director John Stevenson admitted in interviews that he didn't want to parody Kung Fu as a source of comedy, and instead wanted to make an actual, fully fledged martial arts movie, albeit one with a comedic protagonist. I feel this approach is best showcased by the introduction of the film's villain, Tai Lung, and his subsequent escape from Chorgon prison. At the start of the film, Shifu learns about Oogway's vision and sends a messenger named Zhang to the prison to make sure that Tai Lung doesn't actually escape. Commander Vashir dismisses the claim that his prison isn't secure, demonstrating to Zhang, and by extension the audience, that Chorgon prison only has one exit and is over 3,000 feet deep, with Tai Lung completely immobilized at the very bottom and watched over morning, noon, and night by the Anvil of Heaven, a 1,000-strong Rhino army. This then begs the question of how Tai Lung could even possibly escape, which is immediately answered when Tai Lung uses one of Zhang's feathers to open his restraints with his tail, and, in what is quite possibly the most impressive feat of Kung Fu in the entire franchise, proceeds to mercilessly and comically fight his way out of the prison entirely by himself. And that's just the main example, with every fight being similarly impressive in its execution. The combat is also brilliant in more subtle ways. For those who don't know, Chinese martial arts has various styles inspired by animals, which is translated into the movie as each character using the same animal style as Kung Fu as what they're depicted as, with the most notable example being the Furious Five. You also have a pretty stellar voice cast. Of course, you have Po being voiced by Jack Black, Dustin Hoffman as Master Shifu, and Ian McShane as Tai Lung, who together form the emotional core of the film, but also prolific character actor James Hong as Po's father Mr. Ping, Jackie Chan as Master Monkey, who notably reprised his role for the Chinese dub, as well as just being the obvious choice for a martial arts movie, Lucy Liu as Master Viper, who notably played a major role as a trailblazer for more Asian American representation in film, and Seth Rogen as Master Mantis, who's just basically in everything. Combine that with an original score by composers Hans Zimmer and John Powell, and an end credit cover of Kung Fu Fighting by CeeLo Green and Jack Black, and the end result is one of the best wuxia comedies ever made. But now it's time to tackle the film's themes. Kung Fu Panda's main theme falls into knowing your own self-worth and being able to address your shortcomings. So let's start with our protagonist Po, who actually demonstrates that first point with a textbook case of imposter syndrome. The entire film hinges on Po suddenly being chosen as the Dragon Warrior, and it's very obvious from the start that Po isn't really qualified to be this legendary chosen one, especially when you consider how Po actually becomes the Dragon Warrior. Bear in mind, Po's initial motivation isn't even to become a Kung Fu master. While he does dream about being this legendary Kung Fu hero, and has very clear encyclopedic knowledge of every Kung Fu legend ever told, it's pretty obvious, even to Po himself, that his dream will likely never come true. and is pretty resigned to his fate of helping his dad run his noodle shop forever. He only finds out that morning that the Dragon Warrior is going to be chosen the same way that everyone else does, and does everything in his power to get inside the Jade Palace after being locked outside, simply because he wants to know who the Dragon Warrior is going to be. In fact, when he finally does manage to get inside the palace grounds and is unwittingly named the Dragon Warrior himself, everyone is quick to dismiss it as an accident, something that Oogway repeatedly denies, claiming that there's no such thing. Po very much internalizes this belief that him being the Dragon Warrior has to be some sort of mistake or that he was just lucky, and even initially considers quitting after the five have an initially poor perception of him. But Oogway encourages him to focus on the present more and have more faith in himself, which Po takes to heart. And it's here where we start to see what Oogway saw in Po that led to him being chosen, and something that takes Po most of the movie to see in himself. His kind heart and refusal to give up make him the perfect candidate to be the Dragon Warrior. He just needs to have faith in his ability to get there. So if Po is meant to have imposter syndrome, then Tai Lung is clearly on the other end of the spectrum. Now, I've seen stories covering imposter syndrome before, and in that regard, Kung Fu Panda doesn't really break any new ground. However, I've never seen a story tackle its polar opposite, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Unlike Po, who was suddenly thrust into a position he felt he was underqualified for, Tai Lung spent his entire life learning Kung Fu under Shifu as a mentor and surrogate father. And his mastery of the martial art, combined with Shifu's constant praise of his skills, led Tai Lung to believe that he was actually better than he really was, to the point where he convinced himself that he was worthy of being the Dragon Warrior, only for Oogway to sense Tai Lung's inner darkness and refuse, leading him to try and take the Dragon Scroll by force, only for Oogway to defeat him and have him sent to prison. All of these ultimately lead to Tai Lung developing a textbook case of the Dunning-Kruger effect, as he's generally a very overconfident person who comes off as a bit of a know-it-all, being openly boastful about his achievements and believing nobody can match him, looking down on his equals and superiors because he thinks he knows better than they do, like we see with Oogway and the Five, and unable to address his shortcomings, which will become important later. This actually makes Po and Tai Lung work really well as foils to each other, something that becomes more obvious when you look at both of their respective relationships with Shifu and how each interpret Oogway's final lesson. Let's take a look at that first one, because Shifu actually has his own arc in the film that's directly linked to both of theirs. Shifu has obvious control issues, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. He loved Tai Lung as a son and praised him constantly, which blinded him to the fact that he was stroking Tai Lung's ego and turning him into a monster, something he tried to avoid with the Five by distancing himself and keeping a more strict hand on their training. However, this is actually an awful approach for someone in a teaching position to have, particularly a martial arts teacher, due to it inherently being an artistic medium. This is yet another reason why Po was chosen to be the Dragon Warrior, as Oogway outright states that the person he picks would help Shifu find peace. After Po is chosen, Shifu is very quick to dismiss Po's potential, being the main person to consider Po's status as the Dragon Warrior to be an accident and trying everything to get him to quit. He even confronts Oogway about it after Tai Lung escapes prison, who in turn tells him that he needs to remember how to have faith in his students and let go of the illusion of control, demonstrated perfectly by using a peach tree as a metaphor. Shifu is unfortunately left to figure out how to have faith in Po by himself after Oogway straight up dies during their conversation, but eventually does after hearing Po practicing Kung Fu, except it's not coming from the sparring field or the training hall, but the pantry. As it turns out, Po can perform Kung Fu, but only when he's hungry, and Shifu finally learns what Oogway meant when he said there's no such thing as an accident. Po can become the Dragon Warrior, but only if Shifu meets him halfway, so Shifu brings Po to the Pool of Sacred Tears, the birthplace of Kung Fu, to teach him more about the spiritual side of Kung Fu and help him turn hungry Po into everyday Po. And it works, allowing Po to finally learn Kung Fu and develop his own unique fighting style. After Po and Shifu return from the Pool of Sacred Tears, they discover that the Five went off on their own to slow Tai Lung down and buy Po more time, only to instead get the snot beaten out of them due to Tai Lung having mastered the advanced nerve attack technique. Due to this, and because Po has made excellent progress on his training, Shifu decides that Po is finally ready to receive the Dragon Scroll and retrieves it for him, only for Po to discover that it's completely blank. This revelation both confuses and horrifies the heroes, who instead pivot to a backup plan to have Po and the Five evacuate the valley while Shifu holds Tai Lung off. This leads to Po and Tai Lung reuniting with and having very radically different conversations with their respective dads. In Tai Lung's case, he aggressively fights and verbally berates Shifu for turning him into what he is and turning his back on him when he needed him most, only briefly hesitating when Shifu delivers a heartfelt apology for failing him, something that he never expected to hear. Po, meanwhile, stops to talk with his dad while helping him move shop, at which point Mr. Ping observes that Po is clearly depressed about the Dragon Scroll, and decides to cheer Po up by revealing the secret ingredient to his secret ingredient soup, which is revealed to be nothing. This confuses Po at first until Mr. Ping explains that to make something special, you just need to believe that it is special. This causes Po to realize the true meaning of the Dragon Scroll, and he returns to the Jade Palace to confront Tai Lung. The resulting fight is one that you'd expect from a comedic lead like Po, with a lot of emphasis on gags, in addition to having solid fight choreography as Po manages to hold his own against Tai Lung in what is essentially a game of keep away, holding off Tai Lung so that he can never get a hold of the Dragon Scroll. It's a game that Po actually loses initially after Tai Lung manages to overpower Po and take the Dragon Scroll from him, only to be similarly confused to discover it's blank, at which point Po dusts himself off and attempts to explain to Tai Lung what he's interpreted the Dragon Scroll to mean. There's no secret sauce to becoming great at something, be it kung fu, making noodles, or whatever else you want to pursue. You just need to believe in what's special about yourself and put in the work to become great in it, with the Dragon Scroll's true secret being that it's a mirror, with its promise of limitless power being able to look at your own reflection and being proud of who you've become. That's why Po was able to stand proud at the end of the movie, having become his own kind of hero and someone he can be proud of, while Tai Lung ultimately loses because he can't say the same, having only ever had faith in the power of Kung Fu and never in himself, only for that faith to shatter when he discovers that the power he sought was inside him all along, and his inability to self-reflect means that the power will forever be out of his reach, allowing Po to beat him and bring peace to both the Valley and Shifu. At least that's my takeaway, and I want to end it with this. If there's something you want to do, but fear that you won't be good at it, have faith in your own abilities and I guarantee that success will come to you. Thank you so much for watching my dissection of Kung Fu Panda. As I said at the start, I mostly made this video for fun, and I wound up having a lot to say about it. I'll definitely be revisiting this series in the near future, so definitely stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and comment, and consider subscribing so that you don't miss any future uploads. If you'd like to support me in a more hands-on way, you can do so through Patreon. I'll occasionally upload exclusive videos there, so I hope you'll check it out. If you'd like to check out other videos that I made, you can do so via the end screen. And be sure to hang out in the Discord to join my Minecraft server and watch the occasional movie with me. And finally, be sure to check out my main channel, where we stream and do the occasional Let's Play. I'm currently playing through the Switch 2 edition of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, so if that's something you're interested, I'd love to have you there. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!